Hello, everyone. My name is Katie Taylor, and I will be facilitating this talk today titled New Student, New Teacher, New School Year, Prepping for Your New Student Who is Deaf, Hard of Hearing. So this session is meant for an introduction or an overview of what it might be like for you to have a student who is deaf, hard of hearing in your classroom and how to prepare for them to be in your classroom. As I said, I'm Katie Taylor. I'm part of the Patins Project. I'm a Patins specialist in deaf, hard of hearing, primary transition. This is my email, ktaylor@patinsproject.org. That's PATINS project.org. And you can also find me on Twitter at Katie Taylor, IN. So please jump over there when you have a moment and add me to your list of people to follow, and I will follow you back. So welcome here. We have a lino wall, which I would love to show you what that looks like in just a moment. You can also have these slides, and the evaluation will also be posted at the end. The lino wall is a great way to have a back channel to your discussion, to your class, to extend the time of the learning day. So if a student would like to ask you a question, but maybe anonymously, which is great for our students who are deaf, hard of hearing, you could use a free lino wall for that. Let me click on this and show you what that might look like. So it's basically a digital sticky board for you, and you can have this up at all times, and you can even have, the students could even have access to this when they are at home. Say a student may need more processing time, and at 8 p.m. at night, once they are relaxed from the day, they're like, oh, I know the answer to that question, or maybe they have another question. They can come over here, select a sticky note off to the right side, and type in it. And I am typing, "Hi, Mrs. Taylor, I have a question," so that you can see what this looks like. It is anonymous, and you could do some fun things with it too, with the different fonts and different colors. So I'm going to post it, and then I can click and drag this sticky note, oops, over. And I have already posted this. What questions do you have? Do you have any suggestions for students who are deaf, hard of hearing, for tools that you might be using? So this way we can use this, and it is anonymous. So I know our students struggle sometimes with asking questions because they don't want to be the one that always is asking questions or that needs help. So this is a great way for a back channel for your students to ask those questions and stay engaged with you. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about what Patins has to offer, and then we're going to get into you prepping for your student who is deaf, hard of hearing for your classroom. I will have some universal design for learning tips for inclusion of your students. And then you have the option to do a 3-question evaluation to get your professional growth points for attending this session. So if you wouldn't mind going into the comments here in YouTube and sharing your name, what districts you have, what your role is, and if you feel comfortable sharing your email address, that'd be awesome. So I mentioned that I'm part of the Patins Project, and that's what's bringing this session to you today. And it is an acronym, promoting achievement through technology and instruction for all students. And we also have the ICAM, which I'll mention briefly in just a moment, as part of our services as well. And they specialize in accessible educational materials. So our mission here at Patins is to always think about universally design our access, engagement, and participation. And our mission statement is supporting Indiana public schools in creating and sustaining an equitable learning environment for every student. Some people might think that to access Patins, the student might need to have an IEP or an individual education plan, and that is not the case here at Patins. We want to make sure that every student, regardless if they are eligible for an IEP or not, that they have access to their curriculum. Here is a list of all of the things that Patins has to offer for the state of Indiana, and these are at no cost to the school or to families. So let's jump right in. I love to talk about ESSA, Every Student Succeeds Act, which was signed into law in 2015. And this graphic you might have seen before. We lovingly call it the donut or the bagel. But this, I bring special attention to this is in Indiana's interpretation of Every Student Succeeds Act. And I would love for you to notice that right here at the top is universal design for learning. So here at Patins, we really specialize in making sure that everything is universally designed for all students in the classroom, in the schools. You may be more familiar with multi-tiered system of supports, MTSS, which that is right here at the bottom. But today we're going to focus more on universal design for learning. So as we know, collaboration, instruction, assessment, and curriculum. And as we go farther into the middle, shared responsibility, high expectations, and shared accountability, equity plus access definitely will have better outcomes for our students. So let's jump right in. The first thing that I have for you today is when you are identifying a student, going through the assessment process of a student who is deaf, hard of hearing, you may have some things that you are trying to figure out. And I wanted to point out that in this assessment guidelines from the Center for Deaf, Hard of Hearing Education, on page 26, there's a delegation sheet, and I'll show you what that looks like in just a moment. Oops. I'm going to go back to 1 so that you see the first page of this, Guidelines for Assessment and Education Evaluation of Deaf, Hard of Hearing children in Indiana. So this document has a ton of information for you, but I'm going to jump to 36, which will help public schools in the evaluation process. So this is a delegation sheet that might be helpful for you to make sure that you have members on your team, on the evaluation team for this student, to make sure you have each part of Article 7 that you need to see if your student is eligible for services or not. So you have a part for people for the school district, and if you're involving anybody from the center, you have a space for that too. Just making sure that you have all the little pieces that you need, especially if you're part of a co-op or interlocal that's maybe split apart recently, and you're not used to handling these types of evaluations. So that is our first item. Next, I would love to invite this idea of all of our students have unique gifts and ways to contribute to your classroom and to their individual learning. Our talents are so varied per student and even ourselves. And the one thing that we want to think about is that our we actually hear with our brains. Our ears are just a mechanism to get that information to the brain. And so this idea that the ears are just one doorway to get that information to the brain. And so we can use other ways to get that information to our brains. So just this idea of students aren't broken if they have some type of hearing loss. They definitely can do anything that anybody else can do. It's just that they have one doorway to the brain that just isn't functioning the way that a typical student would. So let's talk about that and think about that for a moment, and we will move on to the next concept. There are tons of newer technology or terminology rather in the field of deaf education that if you haven't talked to someone in recent years, you may be using the terminology that's a little older, a little outdated on the right hand of the screen. So let's go ahead and talk about that hearing impaired, you might see this on some paperwork or you might hear this. And it's definitely okay if someone with hearing loss would love to call themselves hearing impaired, that is their choice. But when we go to do evaluations and we are talking about a student who has hearing loss, hearing impaired is actually not what's preferred. Um, through the deaf community. We want to move more towards deaf hard of hearing, or DHH, as our acronym. So let's move away from this HI or hearing impaired and go more towards deaf hard of hearing. The middle concept is the technology that you might use for a student. The older terms are FM, which means frequency modulation, or an auditory trainer. We don't really use these words anymore. And we're going to move more to DM. That's the newest technology, digital modulation. You might hear HAT, hearing assistive technology. You may also hear ALD, assistive learning devices. And you also might hear RMAT, which is remote mic assistive technology. The last one here that I'd like to talk about is auditory, oral, verbal. We are moving more towards listening and spoken language, which you might have heard of LSL. And so let's switch that kind of thinking to LSL or LISLs is what we commonly hear of that, or listening and spoken language. The next concept I'd like to bring to you is that, many teachers have had a student with hearing loss in their classroom at one point in time. And this idea of, oh, I've got it. I've had a student with hearing loss once. Think about it this way, is when you've had one student with hearing loss, you've actually had just one student with hearing loss. And I'd like to bring this graphic here to your attention. So we have, and to bring this, this idea, I have an example for you. So we have Betty, she's age 5. She's entering kindergarten and so excited for school. And on the right-hand side, we have Billy. He's 12 years old. He's entering that middle school age, maybe 6th grade. And the image here in the middle is of an audiogram. So let's think of these two students. They have the same exact audiogram. They have a hearing loss in one ear, and the other one is of typical hearing. They have the same exact audiogram. However, how they function in the classroom and what equipment may work best for them is going to be different. Okay, so Betty, she loves her pink hearing aid. She's had it for a year. She's so excited about it. Maybe she's had it since she was 6 months old. So she is so excited about some DM FM equipment here. So she has the touchscreen mic, which the teacher is going to wear. She has the receiver on the bottom of her hearing aid. And the classroom has a microphone that the students are going to pass around so that Betty can be included in all of the conversations and have that in her busy kindergarten classroom. Okay. Billy, he has the same audiogram, but he's not functioning or doing the same things that Betty is. He doesn't have a hearing aid. He doesn't have a device of his own. And, maybe it was chewed up by the dog and wasn't replaced. Maybe he threw it away. Maybe he rejected it himself, or maybe, for instance, his type of hearing loss, there wasn't a hearing aid that he would benefit from. However, they have identified that he does do well with a sound field speaker, with a touchscreen mic, or maybe a pod system of speakers in the classroom, because he's moving from class to class. So something that might be beneficial is having a system like this in every class that he goes to. So as you can see, Betty and Billy are alike in their audiogram. However, they are not alike in the way that they are functioning or the equipment that they have. The other, another aspect that I'd like to remind you when you are thinking about evaluating a student or having a student that you're like, wonder what's going on with this student. This idea is brought from Dr. Karen Anderson, and there's a handout linked at the bottom of the slides. Are our students with hearing loss zebras or horses? And so this thought process is when you hear hoofbeats, when you see a student functioning in the classroom a certain way, you may think that it's another, something else is going on with them. And when you hear these hoofbeats, your mind automatically says, oh, I know that, that's a horse, okay? So a student may look like they have a language disorder, or like they have a learning difference, but it's actually their hearing loss that hasn't been addressed, okay? The second point is, and we hear this often with students who have a hearing loss that may not be receiving services yet or have the right technology or the right supports, is that the student is daydreaming. They have some type of attention concern where they're not seemingly paying attention, or maybe they seem like they're on the autism spectrum, but it truly is that the hearing loss hasn't been addressed. Now, certainly these things that I'm talking about, a student could have, but if we haven't addressed the hearing loss first, we can't weed that out. So we need to pay close attention, and that's why experts in deaf education play a huge role on the team, and we cannot leave them out of the process of identifying a student. Hearing loss could look like the student has some type of cognitive concern with them, or academic delay, or some kind of functioning in the classroom issue. They could look like that. However, if the hearing loss hasn't been addressed and they don't have the right supports, like I mentioned earlier, it could be the hearing loss and not these other issues. So hearing loss can look like all of these things, but our students with hearing loss truly are unique to our classrooms. They are actually zebras. So you're hearing those hoof beats, you may be thinking it's a horse, but it's actually, they are a different type of horse, and we're going to call them zebras in this analogy. So something interesting to think about, and it's truly why our curriculum needs to be different. Our approaches probably need to be different. Our supports and accommodations are different. And it's just truly why our deaf educators, they play a huge role, even when the rest of the team thinks that they have it. The next idea is to support parent choice. We all know that parents' involvement in IEP process and education play a huge important role. And we just need to think about this, honoring the family and their decisions regarding the way that their child is communicating and the technology. So we really need to have the parents' input and buy-in and involvement in the process from the beginning. And so students have receptive language, where they are receiving what someone is saying or the material, so a way to get the information. And then they also need a way to express themselves, to say, no, I don't like that, or yes, I do want that, let's do more of that, or expressing themselves in a classroom and in a way. So we need to think of that this is a continuum of communication. And a student could be fully visual in their communication, or they can be fully auditory. However, once you get into deaf education, you're going to see that students tend to be a mix of visual and fully auditory. Okay, over here on the right side, it talks about expressive language, and a student could be full sign, American Sign Language, or a manual mode of communication, or they could be fully oral, and communicate through listening and spoken language. However, once you get into knowing a few of these students, it could be a combination. Um, and so we never want to decide this for families. We never want to decide this for students, but instead see where their strengths are and where the family is, and support them in making this choice. Next, I will talk about a familiar sounds audiogram, and I use this to transpose, to take the audiogram that the audiologist, the managing audiologist for the student gives you, and I will take the X's and O's, which X means left ear, O means right ear, and I will put this on this familiar sounds audiogram so that the team can see where the student is on in a perfect environment where they were performing or functioning in the sound booth, and see kind of an explanation of how they are might be functioning in a classroom or with learning speech and language. This should be updated every year, and you should share this with all staff working with the student. Other testing could be significant in the classroom with the classroom acoustics, and I will talk about that in a moment. So these are a couple common accommodations for students who are deaf, hard of hearing. Preferred seating. Now that does not mean that the student has to be front and center of every classroom, but really where they prefer. Where are they able to scan the classroom, and so they can see who is talking at what times. It could be in the middle of the classroom is the best, or off to one side. So preferred definitely doesn't mean that the teacher picks that out for the student always. Um, and so we just want to make sure that that's preferred by the student. Having FM or DM devices, assistive technology, note taking, captioning on all media, not just when it's available, pre-teaching vocabulary, access to videos prior to or after class, and especially not testing over material. It is extremely hard for our students to take notes while they're watching a video, especially if there's captions on, and maybe an interpreter there as well. Sign language interpreting, depending on the mode of communication. Um, and communication access, real-time translation. You might have heard of CART before, so providing captions in a real-time setting. And or C-print transcription services. So these are just a few of the common ones. Next, I'd like to talk about lip reading. Sometimes we get a student and we may ask them, oh, but can you lip read? The students may say yes, and you may think, great, I don't need to provide anything else. They've got it. But I'd like to show you this very brief video on how difficult it actually is to lip read. And believe it or not, only about 30 to 40% is actually can be read from the lips of what somebody is saying. Now, facial cues are very helpful, and facing students is extremely beneficial to our students. However, we cannot rely solely on lip reading, okay? And so I'm going to show you this video.
So when I was really young, probably kindergarten or first grade, I have a much older brother. And we'd go out to recess, and there was this older guy, he might have been in like 5th or 6th grade, that always used to pick on us. And I didn't really know what to do about it. I definitely looked up and completely trusted what my grandma
Today we went to a high school and I pet.
I was posing for a picture with all of my girlfriends,
And all of a sudden one of them reached over.
Can you read my lips?
Can you read
My lips.
Can you read?
Can you read my lips? Can you read her lips?
oh my God, Clementine loves bread. She stole a loaf off the counter.
Can you read his lips?
I have 2 dogs, one boxer, she's 7.5, and one mixed breed, who's 8.
I am deaf, but my word is a hearing one. I rely on the visual, not the auditory. The word lip reading implies reading, like reading a book
Whose text is legible and clear.
but the human face isn't a book, and lip reading isn't reading. People mumble, people talk fast and laugh loudly, people have facial hair like porcupines, lips like sphincters, people cover their mouths, people have accents. But real conversations don't take place in a studio.
Growing up, I used to...
I'm putting together a puzzle without all the pieces. I look in on your mouth. I try to grasp with one sense information intended for another. There have been times when I've questioned why I even tried to read, to wade through the swamp, when I could just use sign language. Some deaf people choose to do just that. It's like a different world. A world filled with rich expression and culture. When people sound, they come alive. But I know I want both worlds. Communication is never a given.
Tuesday, I woke up, had a
And she
rash.
just pulled my dress down. And
When I was little, my family got a cat.
Like, why don't you just hit him in the face? That was like the last thing that I ever...
Guinea
Last
pig.
winter, I learned how to ski. I only cried twice.
But when the reading works, when I focus on one natural face and launch into a conversation, something clicks. Right then, I feel something extraordinary. Human
Connection.
So that is a very powerful little video for you, and you feel free to take that back to your staff for any in-services or information that you may need. Excuse me. All right, let's talk a little bit about assistive technology for our students who are deaf, hard of hearing. First, you're going to want, as part of your evaluation, and this is actually, it can be included in assistive tech evaluation that is part of an IEP, like a formal evaluation. However, you don't have to do that if you don't want to or don't need to. But if you already have an evaluation open, I would definitely see you including that this information in there. So let me show you what it looks like for a second. This is from Phonak, which this is a functional listening and evaluation. So you're going to see how a student may function in quiet and in noise, in close distance and far away. That gives the classroom and staff some information on where a student might be, where they should be seated, and different accommodations to provide. So this is a really nice one where it's a fillable, it talks you about how to do that, what distance. It gives you some information about that. And then it's, I believe this one scores it for you as well. So a really nice document for free to do that functional listening evaluation. You will want to consult with a student's educational audiologist, or if the school doesn't have one of those, definitely the managing audiologist. Ear level equipment is the priority. You always want, if you can get something ear level for the student, you want to do that, because that's the have the optimal gains over the environmental noise, background to noise ratio that you have there. Students with hearing loss cannot just simply block out noise like we do, or typical students with typical hearing, you know, you might say, oh, just block out that fan that's running in the background. They really can't do that. And some of the technology that they might have helps with that background noise. You know, hearing aids could adjust a little bit from that. However, some equipment makes everything louder. So you just want to make sure that you have minimal background noise, like playing music during a time where the students are working and then you are talking over the top of that. Some of those situations you might want to think about and ask the student and the teacher of the deaf what you should do for those. You can connect other devices. So if a student has a DM system with their cochlear implant or their hearing aids, you can connect those to the iPad or the Chromebook or whatever else you might have. You could also connect those things to the class media system, the smart boards, and watching a movie or something like that. There are ways to connect all of those so the student has the best access possible. You will want to plan a backup for any needed repairs. This happens sometimes. You know, sometimes the microphone breaks or stops working. You want to make sure that you have a backup in your district for repairs. And that is something that you need to put in the student's IEP if they have one, or their 504 plan. Number 7, which is the last one here, when a student has equipment like this, we have to teach them how to use it and the staff. So that could be a goal on the IEP, but we also must check the function and the usage every day and document that. And this is linked to a document that you could use, the Ling 6 daily sound check. And you could mark every day that you're checking for the function and the usage of the hearing aid or the cochlear implant or FM system, however, whatever it is. You will want to do this. It is in Article 7. I'll show you that in just a moment. I was going to say something else about this document, and now I have forgotten. But you will want to do this. And if the teacher of the deaf is like itinerant and she's not able to be there every day to do this, you need to train either, you know, a nurse, someone in the office. You can train an instructional assistant to do this. That sometimes the SLP, the speech language pathologist in the building, can do this, but you will want to do this in noisy and in quiet. Oh, and what I was going to say about this just a moment ago is that this is a great way to document, to monitor a student's hearing thresholds or their levels of what they are hearing with and without their hearing aid. This can be very valuable for the family to know that, we need to go to the audiologist and have something bumped, you know, adjusted in the hearing aids or the cochlear implant mapping. So this is a great way to document that as well. and be in collaboration with the audiologist. Now I'm going to show you where it is in Article 7. I'm on page 37, and here at the bottom, that the public agency, which would be the school district, is responsible of maintenance and repair of all equipment and devices provided by the agency. So that's, the FM system and that kind of thing. The public agency is not responsible for the cost of repair of equipment that's not purchased by them. So say personal hearing aids or personal implant. However, the public agency must ensure that hearing aids worn in school by students who are deaf or hard of hearing are functioning properly. So you must have this. There is case law on this. We must have this documentation. And say, a student has hearing aids, but they refuse to wear them, or something else is going on, document that. Have that so that you have it, like, they refuse to wear it today. We did get them out, document those in a way so that you can show that if a case may come up that someone is questioning that. Okay, so sometimes this is a little hard to understand if you haven't been around a student who has hearing loss or a teacher of the deaf. There is expanded core curriculum for students who are deaf, hard of hearing, and this is just a few of the things that a teacher of students who are deaf, hard of hearing needs to cover. So it may look like, they don't need, supports with math or language arts, but they do need supports in these areas. So audiology, career education, communication, family education, functional skills for educational success, self-determination, and advocacy. Those two are huge for our students. And another one that is huge that might not get the most attention is social emotional skills for our students. And I have something more on this in a little bit, and definitely technology. So we definitely have to go over these things, introduce these things, and a perfect way to do that, it's linked here in the title, is expanded core curriculum for students who are deaf, hard of hearing. This one's out of Iowa. There are other states that have these that you can pull from. Minnesota has a great one as well. But these are documents that can travel with the student throughout their career in education. And it definitely covers all of these. But if you can look here, here's the first one for audiology, and it has points for the teacher or whoever is giving services in this area. So early years, emerging years, intermediate, like middle school, and then advanced, like upper high school levels. So there are definitely ways to track and introduce all of these areas to students. So the teacher of the deaf is definitely busy with a lot of these areas when they're meeting with your students. Visual supports are everything. It's life. So we must think about, if I am delivering content via verbal, auditory way, I need to provide a way that is visual for all of aspects. And you might think, oh my gosh, that is a lot. But once you start thinking about your lessons in this way, you'll automatically say, when I talk about this, I'm going to have this graphic. When I talk about this, I'm going to have my Google Slides going with the closed captions. When, I played this tape that is verbal, I'm going to have this transcript. So thinking about it as you're planning in the forefront will be definitely beneficial. Closed captioning is huge for our students, and we must have it on any video, any movie, anything that it has auditory, like I just mentioned. And we need to be thinking about our live captioning of our classes. And this has been huge. And there are tons of apps and software and professionals that can do this for us. My colleague Jenna Fallbush and I have created this captioning resource, and we are crowdsourcing, so you can add your own resources to this, but it has tons, almost anything you can think about that you might be using in the classroom. and the way that you can provide captioning with that. So it has Zoom on here, we have Google Meets, we have all the different things. And if you find something that's not on here, please let us know. And it may need to be updated because these things are changing, it seems like weekly on us. So you have that linked here. Think about in the whole class, the whole school environment, announcements need to be provided, whether it's an email to the student and the family, whether it's, you know, posted on the website or something like that. You need to have those. Think about a way to provide written assignments. So, you know, you're saying to the class, in your English book, you're going to have, you know, page 34, and you need to do questions 1 through 4. And you just said that verbally. Okay, so we need to think about, are we writing it on Post-it notes? Are we turning around after we've said it and writing it on the board? How are we going to provide that so that we make sure that everything has a visual aspect to it? Instructions need to be written out as well. And think about word wall vocabulary with pictures or sound vocabulary. Word walls are very popular for the younger ages as well. Labels around the object of the room. Just thinking about how to universally design your classroom so it's all inclusive and has a written or a visual aspect to it. You have to be thinking that some of these students that you are having in your classroom, English might be the second language that they are trying to learn or they are learning. So think about it in that way too. We have almost 200 different languages in the state of Indiana in our schools. So it's not only our students who are deaf, hard of hearing that will benefit from this. So think about it in a more universal design for learning way. Communication, this is huge, especially, you know, from the spectrum of students with the most complex needs to the students with the most high ability or different abilities. We need to consider our special factors for our students who are deaf, hard of hearing. And the Center for Deaf, Hard of Hearing Education has a document that you can go over with your teams, and just making sure that you know the continuum and you have this documented for expressive and receptive language, what they are using at home, what they're using at school, in the classroom or childcare setting, and what they're using in social situations. And so in all of these situations, it can change. If we think about ourselves, the way that we communicate is different from our parents to when we're in a social situation to when we're at work. So our students have the same thing. And we just need to make sure that the language and communication needs are being met. It also talks about technology. It also talks about opportunities for direct communication with peers and professionals in the child's language and communication mode. We need to consider that, academic levels, and full range of needs. So it's definitely a great document to go through. And I think actually it might be updated from this one. If you go on the Center for Deaf, Hard of Hearing Education or CDHHE's website, there might be a more updated version, but you can use this one as well. It doesn't matter. However, you need to use that information to fill out the box in the IEP. A lot of people don't realize that that's what this box is for in the IEP. After you have said in the IEP process in IIEP, there's a spot where you say what the primary disability is and why, and then you click onto the next screen. You're going to have consideration of special factors, and there's going to be a couple boxes that you're going to say yes or no to. One is learning English or communicate, and then the next one is communication language needs. And that's the box that you fill out. So you use that document to fill out that box in the IEP, and the case conference committee can complete that form during the case conference and fill out that box together. And then you can upload the document into IIEP and the back end. Checking for understanding. This is huge for our students. And sometimes we hear, you know, oh yeah, I checked in with them, they're doing great. But when we really boil it down, we might have asked them, did you hear me? Which is a yes, no question. So a student could technically hear you. They hear you saying something. Yeah, I heard something. Yeah, for sure. But did they understand what you were saying? Did they get the whole thing? Are they lost? We have no idea, because we have said, did you hear me? Did you hear that? And they said, yes. And then you moved on, which I think we're all guilty of until you think about the logistics of all of this. You know, we can walk by a student and say, are you okay? And they say yes, because they are okay. Or do you know what to do? And they can say yes to that, right? And our students who have hearing loss, who are deaf, hard of hearing, and they are excellent at looking like they know what they're doing. However, when you go to grade their papers or something, you're like, oh my gosh, what happened here? They were totally off the mark. Well, consider asking these questions instead that are more open and you can gain more information from. So ask, what did you hear me say? And that way they can say, well, I thought you were talking about this. And you can say, oh, no, let's talk about that a little bit more. I love to say, what will you do next? Or what are you going to do? Or tell me about your assignment. That way you can gather more information if they truly heard what you said and they understand the meaning of what you said. Also, I'd like to back up one. Our students are really great at saying, I heard it all, I got it. However, when you have a hearing loss, you don't actually know that you missed something unless you're being very observant and like saying, oh my gosh, that student's doing something, I don't know what I'm doing, and then asking for help. So relying on a student who is deaf, hard of hearing to ask you for help is not the best strategy for our students, especially the younger ones. Thinking about universal design for learning, I said that I would mention this. I had an article published that is a one-stop lesson planning, how to universal design for learning can help students who are deaf, hard of hearing. And this is in the Odyssey magazine that's put out by Gallaudet University. This is a link to it, so I'll show you what that looks like when you go to and it's a 4-page, it's got lots of things that we've already talked about today. And it has this poster, which I have linked here as well, for considerations that you might have when planning for a student. We also have the Patins UDL lesson creator that I will talk about in a moment as well. So there's that you can share. Here is the poster that you can print out and give out at case conferences, or hang up just to remind everyone that we are planning for our student to be fully included in the Gen Ed classroom, and that is linked here as well. Troubleshooting Toolkit. So teachers of the deaf, hard of hearing may leave some things in the classroom for you, or they have a little kit as well that has extra batteries. We would love to have an extra charger for our devices, sterile wipes, especially in the environment that we are now. The little square wipes that you can just pull out of the package and wipe things down. A little wire hook. Sometimes wax or things get clogged up in our equipment, so that needs to be there. Extra dome moldings or plastic tubing that might come with some of the receivers. We definitely need a backup plan. I know I mentioned that before, and having extra mic clips or lanyards are another must-have in our toolkit. I also have a Google site that you can visit, and it has tons of great reading resources, books, apps. It has providing AIM with captions, the sample policy here. It has caption resource documents and different things on this website. So that could be very valuable for you. And here is the social and emotional skills that we need to recognize and work through. And so this is linked to another document, another checklist for our students that can go through pre-K through high school, and it's similar to the expanded core curriculum as well. So it has different things to look for and to talk to your students about and see if they need any more assistance and where they should be at for their age level or group. So don't forget our teachers who are deaf or hard of hearing. They are professionals. They have license in deaf, hard of hearing. They have degrees in deaf education. And we just need to make sure that they're always included into everything that we're doing. We have conversation with parents about hearing loss. We are having IEP meetings or evaluations. They can share tips, they can observe, they have indirect and direct services, accommodations and modifications. They can co-teach with you, they can educate the parent, and they have connections to other students and adults that may help the student as well. And they can definitely be the teacher of record for the student and help with the equipment. In this day and age, we're all consuming about masks. So let's just be a little cognizant of if you have students who are deaf, hard of hearing, that auditory signal is diminished when we cover our mouth. They can't see the facial expressions, especially if we're trying to lip read or have any of those cues. And they also can't see if you're mad, except for your eyebrows, maybe. So think about those demeanor or emotional factors too, is that, you know, they're looking for those cues and they can't tell them anymore. So think about face shields if those are allowed. Think about the clear masks. There are several things out there, but think about those ways and also having your FM or DM systems as well to help with that sound ratio that you are when you're using the mask. In the spring, I hope that you join us for the Patins Tech Expo. Right now, we're planning for in-person, and it is at no cost, and it's going to be a great time. So please plan for April in the spring to join us at the Tech Expo. Do you have any questions? Please feel free to reach out to me. Here is where you can do your evaluation. You can use your phone and hover over the QR code with your camera on, and the link will come up at the top. Or you can type this in tinyurl.com/Patins Project, or sorry, Patins, Patins PGP. The title of this one was New Student, New Teacher, Prepping for Your Student who is deaf, hard of hearing. I am Katie Taylor, and the date for this is for the Access to Education Conference, and the duration that you will put in is 1 hour. Thank you so much for spending time with me today and learning these new things. We are part of the Indiana Resource Network, so here we are in the middle with Patins, and here's ICAM, and we are just one or two of 16 in the state that offer great service for you. So check the other ones out as well. Please reach out to me. Again, my name is Katie Taylor. I'm part of the Patins Project. My email is ktaylor@patinsproject.org. And my Twitter handle is @KatieTaylorIN. I'd love to see you over there. We also have Twitter chats every Tuesday at 8:30 p.m. during the school year, and that is Eastern Standard Time. Please follow us on Twitter @Patins Project, and we have a hashtag PatinsICam for it to show up in our feed. And we are also on Facebook @Patins Project. Thank you so much for being here today, and I hope that you reach out and let us know how we're doing, and if you need anything else.